Xin chào các bạn, mình là Vua Đọc Sách. Hôm nay mình sẽ đọc truyện What If. Spent fuel pool. What if I took a swim in a typical spent nuclear fuel pool? Would I need to dive to actually experience a fatal amount of radiation? How long could I stay safely at the surface? Assuming you're a reasonably good swimmer, you could probably survive treading water anywhere from 10 to 40 hours. At that point, you could black out from fatigue and drown. This is also true for a pool without nuclear fuel in the bottom. Spent fuel from nuclear reactors is highly radioactive. Water is good for both radiation shielding and cooling, so fuel is stored at the bottom of pools for a couple of decades until it is instilled enough to be moved to dry casks. We haven't really agreed on where to put those dry casks yet. One of these days we should probably figure that out. Here's a geometry of a typical spent storage pool. The heat wouldn't be a big problem. The water temperature in a fuel pool can, in theory, go as high as 50 degrees Celsius, but in practice, is generally between 25 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius, warmer than most pools but cooler than in a hot tub. The most highly radioactive pool rods are those recently removed from a reactor. For the kinds of radiation coming off spent nuclear fuel, the 7 centimeters of water cuts the amount of radiation in half. Based on activity levels provided on Ontario Hydro in this report, this could be the region of danger for fresh fuel rods. Swimming to the bottom, touching your elbows to a fresh fuel canister, and immediately swimming back up would probably be enough to kill you. Yet, outside the outer boundary, you could swim around as long as you wanted. The dose from the core would be less than the normal background dose you get walking around. In fact, as long as you were underwater, you'd be shielded from most of the normal background dose. You may actually receive a lower dose of radiation treading water in a spent fuel pool than walking around on the street. That's if everything goes as planned. If there's corrosion in spent fuel rod casings, there might be some fission products in the water. They do a pretty good job of keeping the water clean, and it wouldn't hurt you to swim in it, but it's radioactive enough that it wouldn't be legal to sell it as bottled water. We know spent fuel pools can be safe to swim in because they're routinely surfaced by human divers. However, these divers have to be careful. On August 31st, 2010, a diver was surfacing a spent fuel pool at the Leibstadt nuclear reactor in Switzerland. He spotted an undefined length of tubing on the bottom of the pool and radioed his supervisor to ask what to do. He was told to put it in the tool basket, which he did. Due to bubble noise in the pool, he didn't hear his radiation alarm. When the tool basket was lifted from the water, the room's radiation alarms went off. The basket was dropped back in the water and the diver left the pool. The diver's thermistor badges showed that he received a higher than normal whole body dose, and the dose in his right hand was extremely high. The object turned out to be protective tubing from a radiation monitor in the reactor core, made highly radioactive from neutron flux. It had been accidentally sheared off while the capsule was being closed in 2006. It sank into a remote corner of the pool where it sat unnoticed for 4 years. The tubing was also radioactive. If he'd tucked it into a tool belt or shoulder bag where it sat close to his body, he couldn't have been killed. As it was, the water protected him, and only his hand, a body part more resistant to radiation than to delicate internal organs, received a heavy dose. So, as far as swimming safety goes, the bottom line that you'd probably be okay as long as you didn't dive to the bottom or pick up anything strange. But just to be sure, I got in touch with a friend of mine who works at a research reactor and asked him what he thought would happen to someone who tried to swim in the radiation containment pool. In our reactor, he thought about it for a moment. You die pretty quickly before reaching the water from gunshot wounds. Tôi đã đọc xong phần đọc của tôi. Cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đã lắng nghe.